8.0 is coming, and it's coming soon. Now, there's still a ton of ways 14 could change coming up, but let's look at some of the less obvious pieces of evidence to see where 8.0 could end up leading. Hello Void, it's Eldon. I really appreciate you stopping by. I'm super excited for 8.0 and what it will bring to 14. If you enjoy this video, please subscribe. We're almost at 500 subscribers and that'll be a nice milestone. There's already been a bunch of speculation about what the next expansion for Final Fantasy XIV will be. Hell, I've even put my hat into the ring quite a few times. Personally, my idea was that the next expansion would be the Void expansion. To support this theory, I brought up the general timeline for foreshadowing and seeding in 14's story, as well as the possibilities for the next canon job. While I still think these points stand, I am not as diehard for my initial idea as I was back before 7.4. I've set my mind to be open to much more possibilities. And since we have a whole bunch of new information and new pieces of evidence that might point us in the right direction, let's take a look at those with open eyes to see where they might lead. So the first thing that we want to look at is the story of 7.4. Overall, while I really enjoyed the story of 7.4, I don't think it put down too many obvious seeds for where the next expansion will actually lead us. I think the ones that it did plant will be obvious in retrospect, but they aren't pointing to any definitive location right now. The one thing that 7.4's story informed for me that is more likely is we probably won't be going deeper into the 9th for 8.0. 7.4's story was mostly about giving Cryle a decent wrap-up and introducing more hints about what's going on with the Winterers as a faction. We didn't receive any teasers for other big locations in the 9th, and we didn't receive any obvious hooks. Perhaps most damning is at the end of the patch when we got to overhear the conversation between Halmarit and our little squirrel friend Calic. They talked about leaving the 9th for some greater purpose. This implies to me that going forward they won't be sticking around in the 9th, and by extension all of their plot threads will also journey with them to a new location. If the story was going to continue in that shard, we would likely have received some obvious piece of bait, some sort of lure that would bring us back more urgently. Instead, we got a general wrap-up of plot threads, hints at new expansions, and introduction to a wider threat that affects all shards. All of this leads me to believe that we're probably not going to see the 9th again anytime soon. The next piece of evidence comes in the form of the variant dungeon. Now, I don't know about you, but I thought that variant dungeon was really fun. I think the bosses were great, and I like how they had two different versions of the mid-boss to keep things a little bit interesting. As far as implications for the future of 14, Square has already shown that they're willing to tease future events using a variant dungeon. The big reveal about the Malala that happened in 7.0 and later in 7.4 was all teased in the Tropical Island variant dungeon way back in Endwalker. This new dungeon may very well do the same thing, especially because I'm talking about a place, a specific piece of culture that we haven't really explored. When preparing for a new expansion, which by necessity, based on the way 14 is constructed, must occur within a new location, 14 has a bit of a tough task on their hands. They want people to be excited to go to this new location, not just because it's new, but also because they have some inkling of what could await them when they get there. They want people to understand what could be there so that they can anticipate, so they can predict, and so the devs don't have to spend a long amount of time establishing what is actually going on in this new place, and they can get right into the juicy stuff. This is one of the main issues with the Dawn Trail. Since we didn't have any idea really what was going on inside the new world, we had to spend basically half of the expansion getting us used to the new world before they could actually do any of the interesting stuff with Alexandria. This new variant dungeon might be a piece of what they're doing to foreshadow this upcoming future location, to prepare the audience for what is to come. Now, I'm not saying explicitly that this next expansion will take us to Corvos. I think that we'd all be pretty excited if that happened. I mean, I'm excited to go to Corvos. I want to go there eventually. But generally, some of the lore there might be relevant to what we face in the next expansion. We could be dealing with mysterious spirits or djinn, abandoned islands, perhaps a wielder of the unyielding blade. Personally, I see popular connections between more than a couple popular theories that are going about. If we do end up in the deeper north, then perhaps there would be a wielder of the unyielding blade. If we're entering Corvos itself, then it does provide a decent number of hints, and I could always see more stuff with magical spirits and djinns popping up as a relevant point in any future expansion. Overall, the variant dungeon provides a lot of interesting things that might become relevant. I don't think it's a guidepost per se. I don't think it's necessarily pointing in the right direction, but it probably does contain some very useful hints. The true hints there, though, will only be revealed given time. Finally, our last and, in my opinion, most interesting piece of evidence that we can look at when trying to figure out where we're going next is Glamour. Making a new expansion for 14 is a complex and expansive process, and there are many factors involved in it that don't often get a lot of attention. One of these elements is clothing the NPCs. Generally speaking, 14 has to balance two things. One, it wants to create an intricate and realistic feeling world with people dressed appropriately for where they are and the culture they're in. At the same time, it doesn't want to spend a ton of budget making clothes that aren't for players. But fortunately, most NPCs can wear the same clothes as players because they use their same basic skeleton. That means that when we're trying to move to a new environment, 14 can just put out a bunch of useful glamour sets that they will eventually be able to clothe the NPCs in. This process starts even before the expansion releases. Sure, we'll get some crafted outfits that fit with the place we're going, and maybe some dungeon rewards as well, but we also start getting these new outfits before the expansion even releases. The best example of this I can think of is in the build up to 7.0. Did you notice that like 70% of the different pieces of Glamour released in that period were sci-fi themed? We got 3 different sets of retro future streetwear from the Crystalline Conflict. We got an entire crafted set that was basically just cyberpunk chic. And this was all at a time when we were literally fighting enemies in the past and exploring the void. The gear they made there was made for the explicit purpose of helping to clothe the people of Alexandria. Just look around at all the people in Alexandria. Like half of them are wearing outfits directly from the last 3 patches of Endwalker. So let's take a look at the 7.0 Glamour to see what we might be getting next. We can generally discount the raid gear because that's supposed to be special. You don't find too many individuals walking around in brand new raid gear. We can also discount the Mog Station items for the same reason. They don't want your paid items to be adorning random NPCs all the time. That leaves us with some interesting stuff. One, I'm noticing a lot of very frilly pieces, coattails, flowers. They don't seem particularly heavy. Not the same kind of stuff we'd see in a very winter-heavy expansion. Kind of more temperate, though still with some layers. I'm also seeing a ton of period pieces. I'm looking directly at the Argonaut set here, where we've got like a full captain's attire, a very classic mage, and some really noble chic aesthetics. A lot of these outfits call back to an older period, so something a little bit more classical and less modern fantasy. My mind leaps to a different age, to a different style of story than the one we currently have in Eorzea. So maybe we'll end up going to a far-flung corner of the world that's isolated and still in a medieval period. Or perhaps more likely, we're going to a shard that has some other type of technology or is perhaps way more magic-based. I would say, personally, this outfit does fit pretty well for a Void expansion. If we end up meeting a lot of people who are not currently Void monsters or going into some sort of flashback period, I think this is kind of the vibe I got from the flashback dungeons in the 6.x series. Though, maybe that's just me stretching it so that I don't feel like I'm wrong. it's still a possibility, IMO. The great thing about a lot of this new evidence, and by great I mean annoying, is that it works for so many of the different theories. I love the idea of the season cycle. I love the idea of getting to know more about the winters, going to the frigid north. Maybe we'll stop by Corvos. Hell, it could be a Mericidia expansion, I don't know. A lot of the evidence we find here later throughout 7.4 doesn't point us in a specific direction, but could be adapted to basically any possibility. I'm sure once 7.5 releases, that will change. We'll get probably a lot more direction as we zero in on where we're actually going to be going. Alright, in the time it took me to make this video, 14 has released a new trailer for patch 7.5. And instead of making a whole nother video, I'm just going to attach the analysis for what it could mean for 8.0 onto this one. The trailer's voiceover is snippets of a conversation between Alice and Halmarit, where they discuss the next big conflict and its implications. This means that we do in fact, in this patch, get the Scions involved with whatever the heck Halmarit and Calyx were talking about at the end of 7.4. The next big hint is that we see this big line of golden light burst into a massive yellow gateway. I don't know about you. That screams interdimensional portal to me. That seems to be exactly the sort of thing that would lead us to another shard. If we already have access to shard-bound travel, then I don't imagine we'll be sticking around in the source, especially for this expansion. The last thing, and I'm just gonna say, I called this before 7.4 dropped, we see the confrontation between us and Enuo, who, now I'm just gonna read this directly from the special site. Wielding the boundless power of the void, they rise from depths unfathomable. The dread sovereign Enuo. Our trial features a powerful void scent. And, as we can see in the trailer, as good guy Golbez and Zero walking back into the picture. I don't know about you, but the void stocks seem to be at an all-time high. Regardless, as far as this trailer means for 8.0, I think it puts us way up on going to another shard, and, in my opinion, puts the Void expansion theory in pretty good standing. All tangents aside, and with all evidence pointed out, that will about do it for me. I've said all I can on this subject. Well, I haven't. I could speculate on this for hours, but I've said all that is going to be useful. Thank you so much for listening. If you think that I'm full of hot air, please let me know in the comments. And if you have any ideas about the interpretations of this evidence or any other evidence I might have missed, also leave it in the comments. I love hearing about all the fun theories of what 8.0 might bring. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please subscribe and like and stay tuned for more 14 content that is to come. I have been a little bit burnt out recently, but I'm trying to get back on the wagon. I have a very fun project in the works, and I'm also excited to cover all the fun theories as 8.0 starts rolling into frame. And just remember, it's a long road out there, Void. So take it easy and look out for the little things. That's where all the fun starts. Ta-ta!